Oh boy, these billionaires in Davos. You know Davos, they have the world like super rich conference with these billionaires. Bill Gates is there, and Tony Blair is there, and Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan is there, and all these rich plutocrats are there, and these rich plutocrats who are literally destroying the not just the country, the world with their greed. They're the ones there to talk about income inequality and how to just give money back to the working people. Well, these people are revolting against any viewpoint that
Let me
says
just play you this little
maybe
sound.
maybe they are responsible for the global economic inequality and misery out there.
Let me just play you this little soundbite from a guy who's kind of gone viral right now, Anand Giridharadas, who's just written this book, Winner Takes All, the charade of the global elites. Look what he just told me.
I think Davos should end. I think it should be canceled this year and should end going forward. It is a family reunion for the people who, in my view, broke the modern world.
I mean, you can't argue with that, right?
I can. Look, it's the easiest line in the world to make, by the way. I tell you what I do when I come to Davos. So later today, I'll be meeting three of my presidents from Africa. I don't think they broke the economic system. I'll be meeting a whole lot of people from multilateral institutions who work in the developing world. I'm here because my institute, which is a not-for-profit institute, works in some of the poorest parts of the world trying to help them. And, to be fair, the people who come here, they're discussing serious issues. So it's the easiest play in the world. Say, oh, all these people are coming along here, the global elite and so on. And by the way, these arguments about cultural identity and nationalism, in my experience, you've got elites on either side of the argument. So, Davos, it is what it is. It's an opportunity for people to come and network on issues of importance. And, some people, may come here who are billionaires from different parts of the world, but other people come because some of the issues that they're discussing here are important.
Oh, network on important issues, Tony Blair says. Important issues. And Bill Gates, he had some thoughts on the rising populist movement.
Here's a somewhat more critical question from Anand Giridharadas, who's written a book called Winner Take All. What do you think of the rising chorus of philanthropy's critics get right? There's people who feel, and Anand argues that for many, philanthropy is a way of not really changing the fundamental system, but a way of making us kind of feel better and perpetuating inequalities.
Well, if people think communism works better or something, I don't know. To me, the system can constantly be tuned, and I'm a believer in an estate tax. I'm a believer in more progressive taxation. I think we have a system that works, but we can tune it to achieve more equality. Things like the earned income tax credit should be made substantially more generous. The people who suggest there's an alternate system, I'll just respectfully disagree with them, that some radically different system would both create good things and give us the wealth that we should spread in a more equal way.
So, Bill Gates is essentially equating being against unfettered capitalism, being against philanthropy as a disguise, philanthropy as a cover for a rigged economic system, as communism. That's apparently communism. By the way, Bill Gates actually owns a waste management company called Republic Services. This doesn't get a lot of attention in the corporate media because the corporate media are a bunch of stooges for the powerful, like Bill Gates. So Bill Gates happens to own a waste management company called Republic Services, and that waste management company literally has underground uranium from the Manhattan Project days at one of its landfills. So one of its landfills has leaking uranium. You want to know how I know that? In addition to an underground methane fire at a nearby landfill. So one landfill has leaking uranium. Another landfill has an underground methane fire. I was at one of those, the one with the underground methane fire. You have to wear a mask. It's so terrible the way it smells. Children in this St. Louis neighborhood where Bill Gates owns this waste management company literally have to go outside and play with masks on. There was an HBO documentary about this called Atomic Homefront. So I don't really want to hear from Bill Gates about, which system will work. Yeah, Bill Gates does some wonderful philanthropy. He also, like Warren Buffett, owns a lot of toxic shithole companies that are destroying the planet and leaking toxic substances into the air and the water. But what's so interesting about Davos is how the overall reaction has been to the new populism, the new progressive policies being pushed by somebody like Ocasio-Cortez. The super rich at Davos are scared of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's proposals to hike taxes on the wealthy. The elite financiers attending the World Economic Forum are worried about the 70% tax rate on earnings above $10 million proposed by freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Quote, "It's scary," Scott Minerd, Global Chief Investment Officer for $265 billion Guggenheim Partners, said in an interview. Quote, "By the time we get to the presidential election, this is going to gain more momentum," said Minerd, who added that he would probably be personally impacted by it. Quote, "And I think the likelihood that a 70% tax rate or something like that becomes policy is actually very real." The billionaires and millionaires attending Davos had misgivings about Ocasio-Cortez's proposal, which she made during a recent 60 Minutes interview. A poll found that 59% of voters were in favor of the idea, and even 45% of Republicans liked it. The lawmaker has turned heads in Washington and on Wall Street with her left-wing economic rhetoric, despite only being sworn into office earlier this month. In Davos, Steven Schwartzman, the billionaire CEO of private equity giant Blackstone, they're corrupt as hell, and Republican megadonor, said sarcastically that he is wildly enthusiastic about the lawmaker's proposed tax hike. He added that, quote, "The U.S. is the second most progressive tax regime in the world, meaning that tax rates climb along with higher incomes. Yeah, unfortunately, though, none of these rich people actually pay the income tax that they're taxed at because they have very, very expensive accountants that get them down to, some of them don't pay any taxes. Not to mention the corporate giveaways." The remarks at Davos came a day after Ocasio-Cortez had even more harsh words about how the U.S. economy works. Quote, "I do think a system that allows billionaires to exist when there are parts of Alabama where people are still getting ringworm because they don't have access to public health is wrong," she said on Martin Luther King Day. Ocasio-Cortez addressed this article in a tweet Tuesday. It's wild that some people are more scared of a marginal tax rate than the fact that 40% of Americans struggle to pay for at least one basic need like food or rent. Not to mention, the majority of Americans don't have enough saved for a $400 emergency. Despite the bipartisan appeal of a tax increase on the wealthy, another billionaire financier dismissed the idea's chances, saying that Democrats angling for a 2020 victory wouldn't move that far to the left. Quote, "It ain't gonna happen, trust me," this billionaire said. Of course, because you've bought off the Democratic Party with the rest of your Democratic elites partying and drinking champagne and eating caviar in the Swiss Alps, in Davos. So, you know me. Ooh, I'm happy when we strike a nerve in the rich. They're scared. Oh, God, pity the billionaire. Pity the billionaire. You remember when Barack Obama was president, there was some billionaires who, in an email chain, comparing themselves to battered wives because Obama wanted to raise taxes, like, slightly? Oh, battered wife syndrome. The sociopathy. That's not a word. These are sociopaths. Some of them, psychopaths. Many of them, megalomaniacs. So let me tell you what's scary. Not knowing if you're going to have enough groceries for your children. Not knowing if you're going to be able to afford life-saving treatment for your children. Not knowing if you're going to be able to eat or pay your rent or keep a roof over your family's head. That's pretty scary. And as somebody myself who's never had that, but recently has had personally economic anxiety because I'm not making money right now, let me tell you something. There's some real scary things going on for the majority of Americans economically because of people in the Swiss Alps right now, because of these billionaires and millionaires. And I got to keep it real. I'm actually not against people becoming millionaires or billionaires. Have at it. Have at it. If you actually work hard Like, don't break the law. Don't pay off the politicians. If you invent something that helps humanity and you make a lot of money, God, I'm with you. I am against those people, men and women, buying off the politicians after the fact, rigging the economic system so they could hoard all of the wealth for themselves. So these people are beyond out of touch. By the way, they could say they're scared of Ocasio-Cortez, but Ocasio-Cortez isn't the first one proposing these things. Bernie Sanders has been proposing these things all along. The only difference is Ocasio-Cortez is a different demographic, and she's galvanizing just as many people as Bernie Sanders has over the years. So what's scary to them is not Ocasio-Cortez. What's scary to them is the thought of their gravy train ending. And we're not even talking about ending their gravy train. You're talking about taxing. Most of them are not, most of them do make more than $10 million a year. But you know what? You're talking about taxing not the whole 10 million, just above the 10 million. And honestly, it ain't going to get to 70%. In this country, are you kidding me? We'd be lucky if it got to 50% with the Democrats in power. The Democratic Party establishment, even if they retake the White House, they're not taxing their donors at 70% above 10 million. It ain't going to happen. Over Nancy Pelosi's lifeless body. I like scared billionaires. But you also have to realize when billionaires feel like they're boxed into a corner, they start spending more money. So you are probably going to see these billionaires flooding the campaigns of Kamala Harris. Yeah, I'm not taking corporate PAC money. Well, look how many of these billionaires individually donate to her. And also, look, you remember the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund, which was this money laundering scheme between the DNC and Hillary Clinton and the state parties, where money was supposed to go to the state parties, but it actually went to Clinton's campaign? Don't think that's not going to happen with whoever becomes the eventual nominee.